Today's classic novel, The River Between, is by Kenyan-born award-winning writer Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. The River Between is of the Honai River, which both separates and simultaneously unites two ridges. The separation is due to how these ridges are kept apart by the river, and the unity is seen on how they meet at a valley which is sustained by the same river. This river is central for all of the people living in this area. Both animal and people and plants use the river for its water supply, the river a source of life. The two ridges, Kameno and Makuyu, represent the two contradictory communities who live on each. Both Kameno and Makuyu have elders who are firmly grounded in their beliefs, and because of differences having been experienced for many years, these two communities do not get along at all. The Kameno community hold the belief that theirs is a sacred land and that the great Murungu gave them a spring which sprung only on their side of the ridge. The Makuyu community held firm the belief that the greatest leaders of the region came from their side of the region and that theirs is a side of great leaders. From the Kameno community was born Mugo, whom all revered as a great seer. One day Mugo shared a prophecy that certain people with clothes like butterflies would arrive and that one from his lineage will be the savior of the villagers from such people. Mugo also specified that these people could not be killed by brutal force, but through learning their ways and using their ways to overcome. These people were the white British colonizers, and indeed they arrived. Chege, the second last descendant from Mugo's lineage, notified Wayaki his son and last remaining descendant from Mugo's lineage. Chege took Wayaki to the sacred tree and made him aware that he is the one destined to be the savior of the people from the British invaders. The British missionaries established missionary schools, hospitals, and were located in Syriana. They were actively converting the people of the land to convert to the ways of Christianity and to denounce their traditional rituals and beliefs, thus dividing the villagers and creating barriers between the converted ones and the non-converted, with aim of converting all of them. Following the prophecy, Chege emphasizes to Wayaki that he is to go and receive education from these British missionaries and learn their ways thoroughly, but should not be influenced by them or ever reject his traditional ways. Meanwhile, Joshua from the Makuyu community receives the message from the missionaries and is fully converted, and similarly to Joshua in the Christian Bible, who boldly states that choose you today who you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua also becomes a strong figure who firmly enforces Christianity in his household, so that his wife, Miriama, and two daughters, Nyambura and Mutoni, have no choice but to follow what they call Joshua's religion. Joshua actively works with the British missionary leader Livingstone and absolutely is loyal. Alongside Joshua's conversion is that of Kaboni, who, though less fervent in preaching, is also seen in support of Christianity, and he encourages his son Kamau to follow suit. Thus, on a given day, Wayaki, Kamau, and Kinutia, a mutual friend, go to study at Syriana Mission School. Wayaki is seen to perform exceedingly well at Syriana and has many convinced that he will someday be a Christian leader. Wayaki, however, remains true to what his father Chege had told him. Wayaki grows in the understanding that the education he receives from the missionaries is exactly what his community needs, and this also becomes a driving force to him excelling in his studies. Naturally, Joshua's daughters also receive British education and the Christianity religion and are expected to exemplify the Christian standard because their father Joshua is a prominent Christian converted leader in the community. Upon completion of the missionary studies in Syriana, We see the different lives led by these Western-taught youth. Nyambura and Mutoni grudgingly continue Joshua's religion and grow to despise it. Wayaki grows in pursuit of his mission to save his community, and he joins the Kiama sect of influential leaders and also establishes schools and informs the leaders that him introducing education is to help the cause of the community, as it had been prophesied that education is what would assist the villagers from overcoming against the British invaders. Kamau grows jealous of Wayaki's impact, and Kenitua remains Wayaki's best friend and informer of village happenings. Though Joshua's daughters despise the religion their father forces on them, they are held by the Christian command that says, "Honor thy father and mother, so your days may be lengthened on earth." Motoni, the youngest daughter, however, chooses to rebel. She knows that Joshua won't approve, but she hides away and goes to her aunt's house, Kamenoside, and she goes ahead and becomes circumcised according to the traditional ways. Prior to her going away, Nyambura and Mutoni discuss on the river her choice to attend the traditional ritual, and Mutoni explains that their mother was also circumcised and later joined Christianity, and that she too wants to be made a woman according to traditional ways, and she will return and continue as a Christian. Though Nyambura fails to convince her sister otherwise, she does point out the bad omen when Mutoni drops a watermelon by the river. This Mutoni ignores. Joshua discovers this rebellion and gives Mutoni the ultimatum to either return right away or to be disowned by his father, and from then onward. She doesn't return. She is disowned. Unfortunately, Mutoni doesn't recover from the circumcision, and in her dying moments, Wayaki becomes central in trying to communicate to her family and in trying to take her to Syriana hospitals for aid. She dies without having received aid. This separates the villagers even more, with some saying Mutoni's disrespect of her father's wishes brought a curse on her, and with others pointing out that the daughter of a religious leader had died in traditional rituals. Joshua continued even more fervently in preaching, and Kabonyi fell through the cracks and left the Christianity religion and joined the Kiama village leaders instead. Wayaki takes an oath that he will be pure in keeping the customs of their traditions. He also continues to build more schools and is respectfully called teacher by both the Kiami leaders and members of the community. His fame grows, so does the envy and hatred in Kabonyi's heart, who seeks to be more prominent in the Kiama and who feels like his son Kamau can easily do as good a job as Wayaki, as he also received same education. Thus Kabonyi and Kamau grow to become protagonists to Wayaki's cause. Meanwhile, Wayaki becomes fully immersed in establishing schools and educating his community in the ways of the West. A conflict arises between Wayaki, Kamau, and Nyambura. The two boys grow to love Nyambura, and yet neither of them will be good enough to be accepted by Joshua, her father. Nyambura loves Wayaki, but is far more loyal to her father to agree to his proposal for marriage. Central to their love is the river, as it is both the place where they admire each other and feel inclined to fall in love, and also the place where such love inclinations are denied. This river is also the place where Nyambura seeks comfort when crying for her dead sister, and also the place where Kamau's grudge grows as he sees Wayaki with Nyambura in embrace. Rumors are spread by Kamau and Kabonyi that Wayaki has broken the traditional oath by choosing to marry a Christian woman, and also is unclean for having touched her dying sister, and uses this to convince the Kiama leaders against Wayaki. Kenitua informs Wayaki, and when things get really heated up, Wayaki hurries to Joshua's church and interrupts the service to announce that Joshua and his followers are in great danger. When Joshua brushes this off and chases Wayaki away, Nyambura stands up in support of Wayaki and shares that Kamau proposed her for marriage and threatened danger when she declined his proposal. Joshua stands his ground and orders Wayaki out of his church. To this, Nyambura responds by grabbing Wayaki's hand and leaving the church holding his hand. On the way, she also tells him that she loves him and doesn't want to separate from him. Wayaki hides her and goes alone to the sacred tree that his father had taken him. He feels a supernatural presence and later receives a vision showing the villagers united in the fight against the British invaders. This vision compels him to urgently address what he had been procrastinating for a while, the need for the villagers to unite and work together. Though having resigned from the sect of Kiama influential leaders, he manages to arrange a meeting where he will address the urgent issue of the unity. It appears to be already late, however, as Kaboni emerges with greater influence in the community. Through this, Wayaki sees how focusing on only education was a faulty approach, as the villagers need immediate action, which can only happen when the education is merged with the unity and political action. Thus, the Kiama, being led by Kaboni, becomes a stronger unit which overpowers Wayaki's cause and rule against him, and he ends in humiliation and awaits punishment from the Kiama. And here follows the 5 elements in plot. Exposition. In the exposition, we see the setting of Kameno and Makuyu and the river Honai, which appears to both separate them and also unite them as a source of life and sustenance. The characters from the Kameno community are Mugo, Chege, and Wayaka, and central to their cultural rituals is the sacred tree and springs. They use the river to perform their circumcision rituals. The characters from the Makuyu community are Jacob, Nyambura, Mutoni, Miriama, Kaboni, Kamau, and Kinutia. They follow the Christian ways, and whereas circumcision rituals are carried out in Kameno, Christmas is celebrated in Makuyu at the church. The problem shared is that of the villagers fighting the invading British colonizers and exploiters and regaining political and civil power. This particularly becomes a problem as a prophecy shared by Mugo highlights that victory of such a battle cannot be by violence, but by first learning the ways of the invaders. Wayaki is informed that he is the one destined to carry out this task and must thus learn the ways of the invaders, but not be influenced by them. The rising action. Many conflicts stand in the way of Wayaki's seamless pursuit of his purpose, such as, number 1, he grows to understand things from the invaders' point of view and grows to appreciate their teachings and becomes convinced that their ways are not all bad. To prove his loyalty, however, he takes the Kiama oath to remain true to tradition. He grows in love with Nyambura, the daughter of Christian leader Joshua. He allows his love for her to overpower his loyalty to tradition, but is dismayed to see how she allows her loyalty to her father's religion to stand in the way of them being together. He faithfully carries out what his father advised him to do, and he establishes many schools in the area. Joshua's younger daughter, Mutoni, rebels against his father's religion and acts on her belief that the Christian religion can be successfully merged with the cultural rituals. She dies in the act of such disobedience, thus denoting that these two worlds can't so easily be merged. Both Kaboni and Kamau, father and son, grow in strife and envy of Wayaki's achievements, and as they create rebellion against him, Wayaki does the huge mistake of leaving the sect of Kiama influential leaders in pursuit of focusing on educating the community according to the ways of the British invaders. a mistake which Kaboni exploits and draws influence to his side, and thus leads a unity against Wayaki and labeling Wayaki a traitor. Climax. The climax begins when Kinuthia informs Wayaki of the dealings of the Kiyama against him. Wayaki boldly addresses Joshua in the middle of all his congregated followers that a danger is lurking. This climax builds up as Nyambura takes Wayaki's side and even holds his hand and further leaves with Wayaki, a direct and public disrespect of his father's wishes. Meanwhile, Wayaki can't even sleep that night without a cause of immediate action, and following vision received while under the sacred tree, Wayaki determines to confront Kabonye immediately the following day. The day arrives, and many villagers and the Kiyama are gathered to hear these two leaders publicly debate critical issues which have caused division in the village. When Kabonye sees that he is failing the debate, he brings out Nyambura and instructs Wayaki to deny that he loves her in public. Wayaki fails to deny his true love for Nyambura. The air becomes thick with the villagers' disappointment of Wayaki, and Wayaki doesn't get time to explain himself, nor the unity he was striving to establish. Falling action. Wayaki no longer becomes referred to as the teacher of the village and is rather made an outcast, together with Nyambura. The Kiyama, led by Kaboni, sits to decide on their punishment. Resolution. Wayaki learns the hard way that education was not the only thing which the villagers needed, and that though it is important, it becomes insignificant if in isolation of the unity of villages, as well as political actions taken to remedy the effects of the invaders.